brand new Sony ZV-E1 was just released, and word on the street is a lot of people are getting rid of their Sony A7s IIIs to cop the Sony ZV-E1. And now I'm gonna go ahead and say it, right now that your boy Sky Money is not getting rid of his Sony A7s III. Like, this thing is a beast. But on the flip side of that, is the Sony A7s III, is it any good in 2023? Like, really? And now before you even go thinking about selling your Sony A7s III for the Sony ZV-E1, I have a couple of reasons that you might not want to. So let's take a walk, grab some coffee, and pimpin', if you want to buy me a coffee, don't be shy, the link is down below. But if not, no tea, no shade. And now there is no doubt about it that the brand new Sony ZV-E1 is a great, amazing camera. And also, you are getting a lot in the camera than you would get in the Sony A7s III. And then to make matters worse, it is significantly cheaper. What is this guy doing? And that's not to take anything from Sony A7s III, it is just outdated. And clearly, Sony ain't bringing any updates. No matter how much we want to update for the Sony A7s III, it ain't happening. So is the Sony A7s III still worth it in 2023? Well, I think we should break it down. You know what? Let's start off with image quality. Is the Sony A7s III good enough for 2023 when it comes to image quality? I'm gonna have to go ahead and say a big old fat yes. It could not only shoot 4K 120, but it also shoots 4K 120 full audio and everything. And now with the Sony ZV-E1 though, yeah, you're only looking at 4K 60, but they are expected to have 4K 120. It ain't out yet though. And I don't know if I trust Sony with updates. I don't know, like I'm still on the fence about that. So we will have to wait to see if they deliver. But again, the Sony A7s III does deliver just on all bases when it comes to video image quality. Boss. Next, let's talk about stabilization. And I'm gonna be real, the Sony A7s III, the stabilization isn't the best anymore. I do think that some of the Canon cameras have a little bit better. The Panasonic stabilization is better. And then to top it all off, the Sony ZV-E1 goes an extra step further and offers dynamic active stabilization. But for the most part, Pippin, the Sony A7s III stabilization is solid, and it's good enough. I mean, you don't believe me, just look at my channel. Like, Pimpin', it gets the job done. Also, another big reason you may not want to be getting rid of your Sony A7s III and why it's good in 2023 is the build quality. When you compare it to the Sony ZV-E1, not only is the Sony A7s III a lot more reliable, but also the build quality is there. Like, it's good. And this pretty much goes across the board for all the Sony A series cameras. While the ZV line cameras, they're built a bit different. Like, they're not built for that kind of work. I have legit used my Sony A7s III in rain, snow, a crazy amount of heat, and even some hail. And my Ninja, I'ma tell you right now that it holds up. No malfunction, no water in the doors, nothing. Look, it is one thing to look good on paper, but it's another thing over delivering from that paper. Boss! And now, another reason that the Sony A7s III is good in 2023 is the simple fact that it is definitely more of a professional camera. I mean, 3 years strong, and I haven't had not one problem with this camera. No corrupted memory cards, like nothing. Like, it is just a workhorse. All the doors on the camera still work, the screen is great, you're getting 2 memory card slots, and not to mention the full like HDMI port. The camera is just a workhorse. It is just an amazing camera, like for real, like hands down. With the Sony A7s III alone, I will be happy for the next like 10 years. Out of all the cameras that's come out since the Sony A7s III, the Sony A7s III is the only camera that you could really trust. It is a camera that you can pick up no matter what you're shooting, no matter what you're wearing. You can trust the camera to get the job done. The Sony A7s III it just built an amazing reputation. Like, it is just an amazing camera. It's a bit loud. It's this thing right here. And look, my ninjas, with all that said too, the Sony A7s III was never meant to be like a vlog camera, but it's just an amazing overall camera. Like, anything you want to film with it, I'm telling you, it will get the job done. And now let's talk about the price, because the Sony A7s III is literally going for about $3,600, something like that. You're also seeing used ones pop up from like $3,200 to like $3,500. So the price is right. The price has always been right for the camera because it will last so long. And again, it wasn't really made for like content creators. It was made for more of the professional line. And for professionals, that price is a steal. The Sony A7s III was also the only camera that it was having a hard time to get to overheat. Like, I'm telling you, this camera just wouldn't overheat. Like, it didn't even have a fan in it, nothing. It just wasn't overheating like that. It wasn't even in its vocabulary. The Sony A7s III was just like, what's overheating? Wow, the weather is, I overdressed because the weather is like, wow, it is nice outside. Man, it's nice. And now another reason that I will not sell my Sony A7s III has to be because I sometimes do like interviews and I have plans for other professional projects. And again, that's where the trust in the Sony A7s III comes from. Like, I know taking this camera to like a long shooting for a long period of time, like an interview or a podcast, something like that, it is gonna perform. Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It will get the job done. You know what, let me just put it like this. I heard someone say this on a podcast once, and he said that it takes a lifetime to build a really good reputation, but it takes a couple of seconds to make a bad reputation. And the Sony A7s III has that reputation. Overall, it was just the perfect video camera. And the last reason I won't be selling my Sony A7s III for the Sony ZV-E1 is because the Sony A7s III is in its own class. Like, and my ninjas, that class is above the Sony ZV-E1. Hey, I'm just being real. I'm just being real. Like, a Tesla Model C may have more bells and whistles than a Ferrari, but it ain't a Ferrari. Selling my Sony A7s III for the Sony ZV-E1 wouldn't really do me any good. It'll probably be just a waste of time. And now, pimpin', don't get it twisted. This ain't a diss track on the Sony ZV-E1. I love the Sony ZV-E1, but it ain't my Sony A7s III. It's just not. At the end of the day, the Sony A7s III and Sony ZV-E1 can coexist together and it can work well together. For example, I can use the Sony ZV-E1 when I'm out hugging the block and traveling, but when it comes to more professional use and like something with a budget, like a high budget, like, let's be real, which one would you take? The Sony A7s III or the Sony ZV-E1? Like, I'm just saying, I'm just saying. And pimpin', there is no doubt about it, it would be the Sony A7s III because even you guys, I know, if you had the two and you had to choose which one to take on a more professional shoot with a budget like me, like your boy Sky Money, you would choose the Sony A7s III all day. Not just part of the day, all day. Boss. Overall, the Sony A7s III is an amazing camera. Uh-oh, we cricket? It's extremely well built, stupid reliable, brings the sauce when it comes to the image quality, and has built the reputation of the king of video. And now this takes nothing away from the Sony ZV-E1, it's just that if you have the Sony A7s III and you're not running and gunning every day, to be real, yeah, you might want to just stick with your Sony A7s III. Because although the Sony ZV-E1 is tailored towards content creators, the Sony A7s III can operate in both of those spaces, both professional as well as content creating. Man, pull up if you want the smoke. And yeah, pimpin', don't get me wrong, you're not getting all the crazy features like the Sony ZV-E1, but when it comes to trust issues, the Sony A7s III got your back. So yes, pimpin', I will not be selling my Sony A7s III, and yes, it is still good in 2023. And now don't get me wrong, the Sony ZV-E1 is good, but at the end of the day, it's not a Sony A7s III. Bye, see you later. Well, pimpin', that is it. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, like, comment, and subscribe. Huge shout out to everybody who bought me a coffee. And pimpin', if you want to buy me a coffee, don't be shy. The link is down below. But if not, no tea, no shade, because I ain't a hater. Thanks again for watching, and let me know what you guys think of the Sony A7s III in 2023. And also let me know what your thoughts are on the Sony ZV-E1. Like, I do think it's a pretty good camera, but if I'm being real, it ain't good enough to make me want to sell my Sony A7s III. I'm just super saiyan. But anyway, pimpin', that is just me. Let me know what you guys think down below. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. So you guys didn't see this, but there was a dude that just rolled up right up on me, like really close, and just kind of stopped and was like this on his bicycle. And then pedaled away.